To everyone here, welcome to this very short, maybe not so short, talk of the sciences of base building. Uh, this time I got a few questions from some of you guys, and I think that would fill up enough time so that I don't actually have to talk about whatever I wanted to talk about. But I think there is one thing that I can talk about before moving on to your questions, because a few days ago 710 actually posted on Mastodon about doing the color glitch involving using a basic wall to apply a color and then using that color, applying that to a plant part, I think. So what am I supposed to read? Yes. Most people know how to do it, but today I want to talk about why this can happen. In base building, colors are not applied to an object with the color value. So think of doing a color picker online when you get like these 6 digits of color. That is the basic value of the colors themselves. But in this instance, it doesn't work this way. They don't get applied to the objects themselves. Instead, these colors are saved in a color palette with 1 to 4 colors for each palette, and they are defined and stored in just one very big list, and they are actually never separate. So you may ask, how do I only see a small select list of like 12 palettes when I want to, put down like a wooden wall or like a concrete wall or something? Where am I? Okay, so there are these things actually called palette groups in the game, internally, of course. Now they're different from the big main list. They only exist to sort all these palettes into different smaller pools, sort of like putting people in different departments. And each object can choose one single pool, not more, of palettes they can use. But here's the kicker: these pools are actually just limited to the menu with so that you can only choose them in game, as in like the color picker UI in game. So they're not actually limiting what colors they can use themselves, only what colors you can pick. And the palette that an object used is actually stored as a numeric ID, sort of like an index in a list. And what that means is that every object can use any palette. And when you choose a color for wall, the next wall you place will be using that color as well. That glitch is basically exploiting just that mechanic. Most objects have a default color palette, but when you choose a color palette for an object and place it down, that palette becomes the new default. That is why when you place a second wall, the color will stay the same. And whenever you select, whatever you select next will use that palette as well. So this even works with objects that can be recolored on a texture level. Wait, I think I skipped something. Right. So after you place down a wall, that palette gets saved. So whatever you chooses, no matter if it is using that pool of palette, or even if it doesn't have recolorization enabled in game, it can still use that color slot as well. So that's how the glitch. Let's see. And scroll down just a little bit. All right, onto your questions. So I received quite a lot of questions actually from Sully and Italic Interloper. So first on the list from Sully, what happens when I push the button, and what backend voodoo of server transfers allow others to see their bases when you upload a base? How long does it take to upload an invisible and be visible to other people not in your group. For instance, my understanding is that only one base you upload per system is visible to other players. If you have multiple, only the most recently uploaded will be seen by others. What are the actual limitations of all this sort of stuff? Bases visible per system, planet, etc. How does the game decide which bases to prioritize loading when you first get to a system? So my answer is, the truth is, we cannot find out exactly the answer to all the server end stuff because we can't really access all that process on client side. So it will inevitably depend on Hello Game server's capabilities to process your base data when you upload it. Based on the way bases are saved in the save file, the game treats a base as its own pocket of data. So each base is saved as its own pocket, and its location, its creator, they're both safe in that pocket. So the game technically doesn't care about who made the base. To be honest, it is likely just a decision to avoid people spamming bases on a planet. That's why they made it so that you can only upload one base per system. It is the same with which base the game wants to download for you, for other people's bases. But I can tell you the completely unrelated fact that a save can download a maximum of 100 multiplayer bases before the old ones get deleted. So they ask another question: which parts are built to render from furthest distances out? So I assume they're asking if some buildable parts gets rendered further than others. This actually has a pretty complicated answer to begin with, starting with Frontiers, because they updated the way that level of detail models gets updated. So the game only used to have two states for faraway models, buildable models at least, an active model and a level of detail, I'll call it LOD model. When you go far enough, the game will just pop out the active model and switch it out with the LOD model. But since Frontiers, Hello Games has added an extra 2 layers on top of this to actively disable any objects away from view. The first one is called the Magic Bound. I didn't make this name up. Hello Games actually calls it magic data internally. These data comprises of some coordinates to make up a bound volume for each object, basically a representation of an object's rough shape. And when that volume is completely out of view or covered by another object, the object just goes poof and completely disappears from the game temporarily until it comes back up again. The second layer is the object's resource cost. What I mean by resource cost here is that these new objects can look pretty complicated these days, so they can take away your machine's processing power when there's a lot of them. This layer calculates based on the data provided, how resource intensive it is to process all of these visually, and how important it is to be shown in detail. Things like an outpost will be more important than a cup, for example, and then the game will hide the stuff that are less important based on the data was given. And then they asked, how do I snap bulkhead doors onto the freighter modules and aside while using the cache pin method? How do I access the grayed out parts in the build catalog, like the curved wall and the curved pipes? Italic Interloper also asked this question, asking, generally, does the cache pin glitch still work for folks? I must apologize because I am not actually a glitcher. I'm just a humble modder who does a lot, looks at a lot of files inside the game. While I don't know if it still works, I do understand that how the cache pin glitch could happen. When you do a button input, the game has to queue them up somehow. And when you input in rapid succession, the game may process your input and what the input actually does in a different order. So when the game processes the check if an object is placeable action, after the placing the object and switching to another object action, then the object will simply be placed without getting checked if it is in fact placeable. It is possible that Hello Games can just fix this order of actions and make the glitch undoable. As for the curved wall and the curved pipe, I'm afraid I don't have a very good answer. those infrastructure objects from the foundation update have actually been completely disabled from even appearing from the build menu in game. So the only way that we can use them would be to move existing ones, or by using a mod like Build Frame MILF, created by yours truly, to make them appear in the menus again. And then they ask, the technical side of race initiators, there are limitations. How far can the checkpoints be placed apart from each other or from the base? Because they have been having this issue where the race just kicks them out of the editor, as in they just randomly can't place a checkpoint. So I'm actually not very knowledgeable on this front, because from what I've tested in basically 10 minutes, the racetrack system seems somewhat separate from the typical base itself. If the racetrack minus the race initiator are in fact separate from the base itself, then it becomes the matter of when the checkpoints are no longer being loaded, which is about 900 units at the maximum when the terrain starts to unload. At that point, the model itself becomes inactive. It becomes a lot model, as I previously stated. And its controlling elements will also be disabled as well. It may depend on line of sight, how complex the surroundings are, because a more complex surroundings may cause the game to unload things prematurely, and how far away you are from the last checkpoint. Italic Interloper also asked a question. They asked, I've been always keen to know the measurement per part. Like if the floor tile is 1 by 1 and the big one is 2 by 2. How do we know its dimensions of each piece in relation to, say, like the floor or the wall? How do snap points on various parts fit into this relative measurement? So we actually don't use this system where we reference everything to a floor tile. We actually use the distance units in the files themselves, which is actually pretty convenient, because 1 unit in the game is also 1 unit in Blender, which I think is also the U unit in game. But you're in luck. They are very much comparable with the base building parts. The smaller floor tile you mentioned is actually a 2 unit by 2 unit square. And with some other objects, the cuboid room is 4 units tall, wide, and long. Basic parts are a little bit of the ordinary. A basic floor is 5.33 recurring, long and wide, and a basic wall is a 3 1/3 units tall. Fun fact, Nada is actually 2 units tall as well. Basically, the same height as the Blender default cube. As for the snap points, they just sit on the edge of the model. In fact, that's where I get all these measurements from just a glance. Okay, I think that's all the questions. Do any of you guys have any more questions to ask?
It was fascinating as hell.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I have a million more questions.
That was absolutely
I asked
amazing.
It was amazing. No questions,
Thank you
plenty
so
of
much.
compliments.
Thank you.
I know I don't speak so well sometimes.
You explained it clearly.
Yeah.
I mean, I did write everything out beforehand, so I was literally just reading from the script.
You did a good job, man.
That answered so many of my questions, especially like the line of distance
usable
and phasing in and out. Like, it makes so much sense, because I guess I've seen that happen in game. I just figured it was maybe, just a rendering thing. Obviously it is, but I didn't understand that when it de-renders like that, when it goes into low, to that low render LOD, it's actually like disabling the mechanics of that part. So I guess that makes sense to why.
Actually, have you ever tried using your binoculars to look at like very far away terrain? It goes from a little
shorter.
Yeah, like the when you use the visor, it shows the distance of where you're pointing at, right? So when you look at something very far away, it goes to infinity, but
Right.
that distance actually kind of stops at 800 to 900 units, and that is basically when the terrain starts to lose its collision. So that rangefinder is basically looking like shooting a ray to the collision and calculating that distance. And because those far away terrain don't have any kind of collision, it just doesn't detect anything. So that's so that's basically the range where basically everything goes unloaded.
Fascinating.
Wow.
That's really nice, like, understanding scientifically of like how all this stuff works, man. Like, you could seriously help out a lot of people on the hub by just giving that information, you know.
Well, he just did.
Yeah.
You just did. So
Hey, I hope,
You wanna book
I
a
hope
weekly spot? Like,
yeah, I
damn.
hope my answer. I hope my answer was sufficient, because normally we just kind of get stuck in the modding Discord, and like there's a lot of stuff going around, but actually a lot of times it doesn't involve this kind of application, because I had basically no idea how race initiator works, like how to build. I didn't have any idea how to build a racetrack before you asked that question. I just had to.
And now with the answer, you gave, it makes me think that-
I just had to like jump right into the game and test it right away. But there are cases where our knowledge can be applied to a wide range of stuff on a blanket level, like how the checkpoint sometimes just goes completely unloaded and just stops being a thing.
I have a question.
So if you're able to mod, so are you able to increase the distance, that lot distance? Like, I guess override, like the natural, like you increase, like override what you normally would be able to see. So like you'd be able to see 2,000 U's out instead.
I think we used to be able to. There's a mod called a fine load, basically to just I think it either increases a little bit the rate that the game unloads things, or it just basically makes far away objects more visible. But of course there is a limit, but I think we can increase it just a little bit, but I'm not entirely sure, and I could be wrong. Fine load may just be increasing the detail of existing lot objects. So
I've got a question about scaling and the Exocraft, and why
Yes.
all of them except for the Minotaur can scale.
Good question.
Yeah.
What do you mean scale? Like the vehicle itself can go bigger?
Bigger or
I am
smaller,
not-
except for the Minotaur.
I am not very aware of that. How would you typically achieve that effect?
Just using a wire scale
If
glitch.
you scale glitch any of the typical
Oh.
Exocraft summoning stations, the Exocrafts that come from them are related to the size of the summoner. But the Minotaur station summons a normal Minotaur no matter what.
What size it
that's
is.
yeah, that's very interesting, because I know how the summoners work by on their own, but I think if that's the case, then for the wielded Exocraft, that would just be because an object is literally let's say spawned in relation to the summoner. So basically the summoner is parent, and it's just spawn this thing outright, whereas the Minotaur would go through basically another function, calling it through maybe another thing. Also, the Minotaur actually actually has its own animations, right? Whereas
Right.
most I don't think any other any other Exocraft does like strict animations with like arm movements and stuff.
Right.
So
Right. The moving wheels.
yeah, and animations actually has a has in most cases would kind of just reset a scale value of a scene.
And for
That's
the
how we call model, basically.
And for the Exocraft, when you scale them, it doesn't scale their collision box; it scales just the
Right.
3D model.
Right.
So
That I actually do have an answer to, because it had affected me for a very long time. It is very funny because the collision for basically all the Exocrafts are not defined in the models themselves.
what?
They are actually defined in a data table that controls all the other vehicle functions. So normally, right, like with this chair and this table and these stairs, all these collisions are defined within the model file. We call it a scene file.
Right.
So that there will be like a part of the data that just states, oh, this table has like a cube for collision, but Exocraft don't do that. They just sit in this another table completely separate, and that is why for the longest time the vanilla rover has this collision kind of just sunk like a unit down, so that when you stands on top of a rover, your entire set of feet would just sink into it, and that was very frustrating, I must say.
Wow.
Fair enough.
This is all very enlightening.
Thank you very much for saying that.
I have another question that Italic discovered for a color glitch. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's where he wire caches a bag of concrete or something, or he places the end of the wire and then he switches to the bag of concrete, and when he moves the bag of concrete, it changes color rapidly, and when he places the bag of concrete, it remains that color that you can't get on a color palette.
Oh, that's very interesting.
It goes through like an RGB.
Wonder if you can do
okay.
that.
Dragons
With the color swap glitch that I posted.
I don't
at the place that we just built for you, that just happened too. That neon green wall.
Yeah, it'll do it for a lot of
happens.
But
that is very interesting, because I don't think that is that would happen with anything related to a color palette, because because as I say, right, all the color palettes are stored in a numeric value, but
right.
Of course there would be there could be values outside that range. So let's say there are maybe like, I don't know, 60 palettes in the game right now, but if you go to 61, it will just go over. There is usually a check where a game when you go over that normal range, it just roll back to the first one. But it could be possible that what you're doing either is overflowing that value so much that it just doesn't know what to do anymore, or it is integrating itself with I don't know how to put this elegantly, but it's basically using a color that is matching its surroundings, or like a color value that itself or its origin is touching. But without more testing, I can't say for sure, because that is very peculiar indeed.
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, because I have never heard of that happening. That is very interesting.
So what I've witnessed, I guess, and I could probably show you 2 examples, but I've seen it more than this, is that when items clip together,
Right.
they steal colors that they normally wouldn't. Like yesterday at Travis's build, I built a little what is it, the scissor lift thing, and part of it clipped through like a support structure, and the support
Right.
structure took the color palette from the scissor lift. I was like, why is this like beige and brown? Because that's not a normal color, and I think it stole it from that. And the other one is at my tiki bar. All of the planters in the middle are glitched together, and they're full of they're all full of nip buds. And I painted all the planters purple, but one shows up kind of like tealy green, and one shows up as like a yellowy orange. And I think it's stealing the color from the nip buds from clipping through it.
Yeah, I think that actually makes a lot of sense. If they are overlapping with each other, that would mean that those colors are actually just getting mixed together, because the application of color is basically just an overlay. When things go very close together or intersecting with each other, it may just basically steal the color overlay from another object that is touching, and it's just applying it onto itself as well.
So basically, this is built in Blender, right?
Right.
So it's basically just connecting those 2 surfaces and overlaying the same color onto both, because it's viewing them as a single surface at that point.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much. Like you can see it goes the same with decals as well, actually, because when you like put a decal on like a curved corner like this one, the decal actually goes like it sticks to both surfaces at an angle, right? Kind of split in the middle. So the color actually gets kind of like applied, kind of like a wallpaper as well. So just stick to both surfaces if they're intersecting with each other.
That's got it. Okay, so the decals basically can kind of clip through more because they have a weird box.
Right.
And when they're clipping through multiple things, they're able to steal the color from it, because it's tying
it's
the
like
color. The position is calling for the color, and the color is being applied to both because they're
it's like a very close projection.
Okay.
So sometimes it can get projected onto like other surfaces.
This makes so much more
Just
sense.
like if in Blender you put 2 objects together and then hit fill color, it'll fill both surfaces.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, it's just viewing multiple surfaces as a single surface because they've come in contact.
Yep.
Fascinating stuff.
Hmm?
Super fascinating.
Very interesting.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, man,
Makes
thanks
it a
for
lot
giving
easier
the
to
speech.
understand what's going on.
But yeah,
Great start to the guest speaker sessions.
yeah. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to ask me. I guess if I have enough questions to answer, I'll apply for the next one as well. I don't
We're
know.
doing them every other week.
Yeah. If I have the time, I'll join in again next week. Well, 2 weeks later.
I'm sure we'd love to have you, man. It was a great
Right.
speech. Very interesting.
Thank you.